Oh, good evening. Hello. Good morning.
Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvi Navaditamastu Mavid Vishavahai Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman protect us. May he guide us and give us strength and right understanding. May love and harmony be with us all. Peace, peace, peace.
So, Swami, tell me again, short-term memory here. Who are we and what are we doing here tonight?
Well, according to today's reading, we are Brahman. Thou art that.
The tea leaves. Oh, that's wonderful. I think we can just fold our feet
Yes,
down.
right.
It's like the lecture. Do you remember that, Swami? One time, this really happened. One of the senior Swamis, that would mean at the very most third generation, probably it wasn't a direct disciple, but might have been. And he was going to give a lecture on silence, I think in South India. And so he got up and sat there and he said the subject this evening or this today, whatever it is silence, and got up and walked off. So Quaker meeting. You be inspired first, Swami.
Now, let's see, do you have the exact spot here? Is it the top of 54?
Yes.
Or no, more towards the bottom? We did the nitty-nitty, I think.
Yes, we did.
Yes, okay. The nitty-gritty of the nitty-nitty. Okay. A sincere seeker, this is Swami Abhedananda's chapter on Jnana Yoga.
And Swami Abhedananda was one of the 16 disciples, direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, a recent superluminary in India. Okay.
A sincere seeker after truth should hear over and over again that the Atman, or true self, is one with Brahman, or the eternal truth, and should repeat such phrases as Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman, or Satchidananda Rupoham, I am one with the absolute source of knowledge, existence, and bliss. One should constantly think of the meaning of Tat Twamasi, that thou art, and should devote his time in meditating upon this oneness until the light of Brahman illumines his soul, dispelling the darkness of avidya and transforming his ego into the essence of the divinity.
Move your pen. Thank you. Wow. I hope you don't mind. I mean, this is my way of honoring something, to lapse into a little colloquiality. Maybe it's an American thing. The most reverential thing I can think of saying right now is, he can really sling the lingo. Look at, I mean, talk about a Japanese, 4-syllable poem that has to be, whatever it is, it has to be exact. And should devote one's time in meditating upon this oneness until the light of Brahman illumines one's soul, dispelling the darkness of avidya, ignorance, and transforming one's ego into the essence of divinity. Talk about saying it all in one phrase. Now we can go. Now we can go and fold our papers and sit in meditation till midnight and have some chance of coming home on the evening train. These wonderful disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, just about all of them, in various times, various ways, they say they're transferring, not the literal word, the sincere import of it. There's no time of day. There's no time. That's not a good time to think of God. And even if one has the opportunity, the occasion, the motivation, to meditate on God. That the rising of the sun Hey, most of the cultures of the world still don't use watches, and most of the people that don't use watches run by sun time look down upon us that do. Yee. So Roe had it pretty clear that the people living in fine houses in Boston, when he cobbled together his for $42.60 or something from old timber that an Irishman had used or something, and lived on Emerson's back 40 at Waldman Pond, because Emerson said, why don't you go back there, Henry, and see if you can become a lumen. So he realized that those people in the fine houses in Boston were prisoners to their home. Well, I ask you, how many of us in America spend all this time doing this, that, yonder, for things that are really external, keeping up appearances, doing this, whatever it may be? One lady, Swami Abhedananda, used to joke about so many things. She said, oh, and she was quite sincere, oh, Swami, when will I ever find, and she was retired, so when will I ever find time to meditate? Well, what do you do with your day? Well, I get up in the morning and I have to read my mail and then I do this and so whatever. Did one ever think of going quietly into the sanctity, the fortress, the inner sanctum of one's own room and one's own heart and sit in silence, in receptivity and love and yearning, and try to place oneself in the presence of the all, capital A. So they say morning when the sun rises rather than by the clock, in the evening when the sun sets, and at high noon. And if you're still awake by that time, yep, midnight, they say, can be a beautiful, magnificent time for thinking of God. Instead of worshiping, well, now, here you go. See, here's where the rubber meets the road. Different paths up the mountain, same goal. The final nirvikalpa samadhi experience of Advaita Vedanta oneness is the same. And you can call it Satchitananda, existence, knowledge, bliss, or in a certain mood, perhaps a little more poetic, a little more emotional significance there, being with a capital B, wisdom, and joy, or love. But the yogi, the karma yogi, can try to say, well, I'm going to try to head for Mars. I'm going to blast off to that bio, hydrogen and oxygen, zingo. Instead of worshiping a personal God, like a bhakta, like a follower of the path of devotion, a jnana yogi, follower of the path of knowledge, should clearly understand the significance of all his, that's God's, attributes as given in the different scriptures, such as the creator or the governor of the universe. He is spirit, infinite, omniscient, all-powerful, unchangeable, true, and one. And rejecting the worship of the personal God as an act proceeding from lesser insight, we'll say. The whole thing boils down to Swamiji's question, would you rather love something or be love itself? When you hug your friend, haven't seen him for years, there he is. The closer you get to your friend, the less of him you see, and you hug him, and then the joy is remembered of all those years. I met the man, a friend who was a drinking buddy of my mother's father, grandfather. And they were drinking one night, and this fella climbed on a train, on a car of a train, it wasn't a freight train. And the train starts up in the middle of the night, and he galumps off to some other town. And he stays there. It was just up the road a ways, but those days, he came back in 40 years, and grandfather said, where'd you go the other night? He fell asleep. All right. So here, hang on to it. But this is the way that he's saying that the person who sees him as all those marvelous things those words were just to inspire us, to kick us upstairs like over the goalpost for at least 3 points. and rejecting the worship of the personal God as, we'll say, a lesser act, an act proceeding from ignorance of the divine nature of the self, capital S, which is universal, or Atman, the universal infinity shining either within our heart or in everything. And the greatest philosopher I submit is my candidate tonight is Shankara, maybe circa 800 BC. Is it BC or AD? AD. I'm confused now. Huh? AD, sure. Who said Atman, infinity shining within, and Brahman are one. This is the experience of the mystic. And we all get what Swami Swahananda used to call hints. My friend John Rosenberg, who taught English until his practically 90, I don't know, Columbia University, called them aperçus. Wonderful French expression. Little perceptions. And they do say in India, and maybe I'm extending it, but they say when you get those hints, when your mind is inspired for a split second even to think of God as the transcendent, at that moment you're one with Brahman, man. You're seeing right to the depth of the pool or the deep part of the well. So that's what they say, that you can even go beyond this idea of the personal God, which for India, they're perfectly willing to talk about all of the subjectivity, all of the subjective consciousness of the universe. That's us and bugs and plants and the insentient, how the Buddhists pray for all sentient beings and insentient beings because they know inside is the subjective experience. So when that insight comes, bingo, bango, bongo, you go beyond it, loving this and that, and become love itself, we'll say. So they see that as ignorance of the divine nature of the self, capital S or Atman. Then he should seek that which is above all attributes and beyond all descriptions, that transcends the realm of thought and cannot be revealed by human intellect or understanding. When Sri Ramakrishna would come back from Nirvikalpa Samadhi, once he got the hang of it, he worked at it a long time. I suspect every day he could have gone into that highest mountain state, come back, and he was tongue-tied. I just love colloquial English. He never said he's tongue-tied, but he's tongue-tied. What's the matter, Sri Ramakrishna? Your cat got your tongue? I just can't express it. I want to. I try to tell you about it. So the best they can do in India about the self with a capital S with a big T, transcendent, is to point at the branch of a tree and say, you see the moon up there? Well, of course I do. Well, do you see over right near the branch of the tree there's a bright star? Yes, I can see that star. Look closely. There's another one. 2 stars, so close together. And there is such a star in the handle of the Big Dipper, and the American Indians used to point it out to their sons to see if they had good vision. So they can denote, they can point in India to the transcendent. And the way they've come up with this thing from the Upanishads, which makes it so old and so wonderful, and way before Zebra and way under BC, they found out everything. We found out the atomic age recently, huh? That's what we did. And they found out everything, that Atman and Brahman are one. So here we go, it says, that transcends the realm of thought and cannot be revealed by human intellect or understanding. Realize that all conceptions of a personal God are more or less anthropomorphic. Hey, isn't that true? I had a niece one time, I wish it on everybody, but you got to be ready for this. And she just told me, not that long ago, now it's just between me and her, so you know, she wasn't all that sure. I mean, this is your modern day, modern 30, modern millennium. He's telling you in the 21st century about God being an old man. Hmm? That's her perspective on things. Lying on a cloud. And the emphasis is on old man with a beard. Well, I say different strokes for different folks. So they say that realize that all conceptions of a personal God are more or less anthropomorphic, having the shape of a human, and that the Creator, capital C, himself, must be phenomenal. That means having to do with the world of sense experience, with a form, with a face, with a shape. Since he can exist only in relation to the created object. Can't have a creator without creations. I mean, whatever God was doing before it all started happening this time around, twiddling his thumbs or whatever it was, he was not the creator at the time that there's no creation. If it's cyclical, well, so be it. We had a wonderful saintly man here named Ernesto. He said God worked 6 days a week and then rested on the seventh. He said, but he asked me to work 7 days a week. He can exist only in relation to the created object. A jnana yogi consequently does not pray to the personal God or to any other spirit or being, small letters, S and B. To him, prayers and devotions are useless and unnecessary. The only trouble is that every one of the yogas, the paths, has strengths and potential weaknesses. That's why some of us try to blend all four, different times of day, whatever. And I'm submitting in my superficial experience that without ketchup, which is bhakti, which is love and poetry in the soul, a person who tries this admittedly quicker path, but more difficult path, without a heart, like Wizard of Oz, he can make some bad umpire calls. Not intentionally, and not the saints, but the people that read the book and say, oh yeah, I'm one with Brahman. Well, what are they going to do with the rest of their life? Are they going to be there with heart enough is my question when somebody is suffering right in front of their face. Because they may be over, as we say in L.A., and la-la land, huh? But nevertheless, that's up to the individual soul, spirit, and particularly in relation to a teacher, to a manager, as I like to say, Thomas of Sorda, St. Thomas, that manages the baseball team. He'll know what your path is and how the things that you want, how you want to blend them and develop. Or, as Swamiji says, one of these paths. Or more, or all. So there you go. This fellow says to him, prayers and devotions are useless and unnecessary. He does not seek, think of it, any supernatural help or divine, capital D, mercy. For he is conscious of the omnipotent and omniscient nature of the Atman, spirit within, and knows that his true self, capital S, is beyond good and evil, above virtue and vice, unlimited by all laws, and that it reigns over nature in its own glory. Hey kids, it doesn't get much better than this. That was Ramakrishna's own experience. He offered to Mother everything. My wisdom and my ignorance, my good and my bad. And then speaking about getting tongue-tied, cat got your tongue? He found he couldn't say to Mother, the Divine, here is my truth and my untruth. Why? Because you could put it this way, truth is the very building blocks of the universe. You can't avoid it. It's really not whether you got a choice. There are some laws, my friends, that you cannot not obey. We make all these laws, we think humans make them. But the divine laws, like how about the law of gravity? You jump out of a building, and we had a couple of kids on LSD jumped out of the second floor of this apartment house down the street. Superman, huh? There is no secular, small s self Superman. There is none. So this other thing of transcendence, well now, how did it be worked in? Above the true self, as capitalist, is beyond good and evil, above virtue and vice, unlimited by all laws, and that it reigns over nature in its own glory on the bedrock and the ground of truth with a capital T. And know the truth, and the truth will make you free. He feels that it is the same in essence as the Creator, capital C, or personal God. See? Instead of identifying himself with body, mind, senses, or intellect, the world of the senses, the mind, the body and mind, he always remembers that he is the Atman. Got to tell you, these Jnana yogis, if you ever meet a real one, true one, their mind is always fixed, as I like to say, on the third rail of the subway train or the electric car. These kids have their minds glued on God. They just don't call it that. All right? Instead of identifying himself with all these, he remembers that he's Atman, which is birthless, deathless, sinless, fearless, immutable, externally peaceful, eternally peaceful, and ever undisturbed by pleasant or unpleasant experiences, sensations, or mental and physical changes. Sounds like that person's, that man, that was almost home, right? Just about home. The end of the line on the subway. A true Jnana yogi constantly tries to keep himself above all phenomenal conditions and incessantly repeats, talk about meditation, Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman. These are called the Mahavakyas, the great sayings, the great voices. Soham, Vivekananda, I am he, I am he. He says these things within himself. I am neither mind, nor intellect, nor ego, nor senses. I'm neither earth, nor water, nor air, nor fire, nor space. But my true nature is absolute existence, knowledge, and bliss. I am he. I am he. He's quoting from the scriptures, the Sanskrit scriptures. There you go, Swami. I'm over and out.
Yeah, this is Shankar's, I think it's Shankar's 6 stanzas on Nirvana. Here we go. I am neither the organic activity, nor am I the elements of the body, neither the sense of knowledge, nor that of action. But I am absolute existence, absolute knowledge, and bliss. I am he, I am he. I have neither hatred nor love, neither greed nor delusion, neither egotism nor pride, nor vanity, neither creed nor faith, nor aim nor desire for freedom. I am the absolute existence, knowledge, and bliss. I am he, I am he. I have neither virtue nor vice, nor sin, neither pleasure nor pain, neither scriptures nor ritual, nor ceremonies. I am neither food, nor am I the eater. I am absolute existence, knowledge, and bliss. I am he, I am he. I have neither death, nor fear of death, nor birth, nor caste distinction, neither father, nor mother, neither friend nor foe, neither master nor disciple. I am the absolute existence, knowledge, and bliss. I am He, I am He. I have neither doubt nor question. I am formless and all-pervading. I am the eternal Lord of nature and the master of the senses. I am now neither bound nor free. I am one with Brahman. I am the omnipresent divinity. I am the immutable Lord of all. I am the absolute existence, knowledge, and bliss. I am He, I am He. Yeah, 6 stanzas on
Yeah.
Jnana by Shankara.
How marvelous, how
Different
marvelous.
translation than we're used to, but
Well, yes, I just find this so exhilarating, don't you? It really is exhilarating. And you know, there are all these marvelous analogies or paths, and they're obviously going up the same mountain. So let's rejoice, revel even, in the different paths that we know that our brothers and sisters in the Spirit are taking. Let's rejoice in it. And you're kidding, you say, well, you know, so-and-so is doing that, so they're doing it for me. I don't have to do that. But the words of Paul, St. Paul, come ringing in one's ears. In Christ there is no Jew or Greek. There is no male or female. And today it's so relevant. The world's oppressed by the greatest tyranny that Gandhi could think of, which is poverty and its attendant hunger. And he says, and in Christ there is no bondsman or free. There's a whole nother dimension. And it really don't matter, do it. When you're in God country, capital G, capital C, whether you're a Ghani or a Bhakt or anything else, or a melange of all of them, you know, like chop suey, smorgasbord. The main thing, my friend, is, are we on the path? Are we on the trail? Well, this is pretty exciting to me because I'm shivering. I mentioned earlier today that I felt very cold long down sundown. It's June and it's getting kind of dark. I'm stirred up now. This is the end of the chapter. Is it the end of the book, Swami? What is it? It's the end of this marvelous book in which our beloved Abhedananda, we're going to call it, you know, siesta time here for the summer after next Friday night. We've had a wonderful time with Abhedananda as he took us the way the Swami selected the passages through the various elements of the mind, starting with the body and then the mind, the different elements, the senses going into the level of intellectual discernment. Well, what do these sights and sounds mean? And then going deeper and deeper into the various states of consciousness, waking consciousness, sleep and dreamless sleep, where it is, as it were, as if we lay at the feet of Brahman in our sleep, blissful, and wake up refreshed, saying, I had such a good sleep, such that they call it, you know, the blissful sheath. And then beyond all these states of relative plane consciousness into this, the crescendo, that's why some of us love music so much. Handel could do no more. Talk about the Amen chorus. Handel's Messiah, Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. This is it, my friends. Thus constantly practicing discrimination and rising above all relativity and phenomenal appearances, a Jnana yogi realizes the absolute, unchangeable, eternal truth, capital T, in this life, and ultimately becomes one with it, because the Jnana Yoga declares that he who knows Brahman becomes Brahman. Brahmavid, Brahmavai, Bhavati. For the same reason that the knower of God can be no other than God himself. One with the shining infinity, which incidentally we are. A Jnana Yoga never forgets that his true self, capital S, is Brahman, having attained to this supreme God consciousness. And oh my goodness, he does what the Germans do, puts that all in one word. Got so many letters I can't even count them. Do you realize that Sanskrit and computer language and German all allied the words together? The Upanishads talk about a mystery and difficulty. There were no commas. And there were no periods in the Sanskrit into which eventually the Upanishads were set down. And there were no spaces between the words. Having attained to the supreme God consciousness, he lives in the world like an eternal witness of all mental and physical changes. Ever happy and undisturbed, he travels from place to place, pointing out to mankind the way to absolute freedom and perfection. And I'm thinking of Vivekananda with this last sentence. A perfect Jnana Yogi indeed lives as an embodiment of the absolute divinity, capital D, on this earth. Jaimo, thank you, Swami Atma Vijayananda.
What are we going to do?
Twiddle our
I didn't
thumbs.
photocopy anything
Twiddle
else
our
today.
Why don't you expound on it?
Oh,
Like
I
sing me a song.
Yeah, I don't think
I
so.
have a song to sing, oh, sing me your song, oh. Comes in Pilgrim's Song.
Yes. Well, we could read questions and answers.
Why don't we try that for a while? And incidentally,
Yes.
if we have any questions and answers, dive in.
Yeah. Fortunately, the appendix hasn't been removed from this book.
Uh-oh. We're in deep trouble.
When should we consider a material universe?
Questions again. All right. Well, yeah.
When should we consider a material universe an illusion? Do you want to do all the answers and I'll do the questions?
No. I'm over it out for a while. I'll absorb.
You cannot call it an illusion until you reach the absolute. It would be a mistake. It is real so long you live in nescience. But anyone who has reached the absolute, to him it would appear like a dream. So long as we are conscious of the phenomenal things, they appear as real to us. They are not illusions. There is a great difference between the terms illusion and delusion. An illusion has not even apparent existence, and it is non-existent for all the time, like the sky flower. But the delusion has an apparent existence, but has no permanent existence. And therefore, delusion is a correct term for Maya, or avidya, instead of the term illusion. That's a nice distinction.
That is a nice distinction.
I wonder if the English dictionary actually puts it that way.
And you know, Swami, could I just have for me? The Swamis like to point out to us, the elder Swamis, that Maya, which is related, as Satya and I were talking today, to the word magic, in the same word that royal and regal and Raja, you see the G's and the Y's and the J's, are all the same word. So same word magic and magician and Maya and Magi, the astronomers that came following the instinct of the spirit of the star to Bethlehem. It's all related. So the Swamis are keen for us to understand what the American mind, just trots off with a halfway understanding. Just doesn't understand. Dog in a rag or dog in a bone runs off with. Maya is not illusion. It's a mixture of reality and make-believe. Now that's an important distinction. This universe of name and form, as I like to say, because of John Dobson, our resident astronomer, philosopher for so many years, we're looking up at the night sky and we're seeing a sound and light show. What the French call son et lumière. We have it in front of the Notre Dame, huh? Sound and light show at night. Because of the magic, the excitement of seeing something that's so far away, even the nearest stars, 4 light years or so away, Proxima Centauri. That means the light tonight, which is on your retina, left that star 4 years ago. So you're seeing it as John used to say, back in space by the trick of seeing it back in time. Far away in space by the trick of seeing it back in time. They're all united. So all of the phenomenal universe is a sound and light show. And Maya is not, as they point out, illusion. It's a mixture of reality with a capital R, which is Brahman, because that's all we see. Everything is Brahman, but we don't see it that way. And appearance, make-believe. Now, the thought occurred to me today, Swami, so he's so kind, really, over the years. You can't believe. He's being kind right now. You know, he wants to tell me a pun, and I'm just trying to fend it off till it goes away like a mosquito. It just occurred to me today, Swami, so I'm going to throw it out there. A dictator deals in lies. Now, what, my friend, just a simple clinical definition, is the definition of madness, particularly serious madness, you know, like psychosis. It means a person can't distinguish reality. The private reality is different than the public reality, for example. But this is exactly what the spiritual aspirant, that's why we're all in a cage, we're all in a fog of ignorance, we're all in a state where our mind is not clear. That's the human condition. Kind of fun, huh? Getting out of this thing? Where we have mistaken the apparent for the real. And we call the real the apparent. My friends, that's exactly what the dictator does. He tells everybody what they codified in the recent 20th century experience with real bad dictators. The big lie. If you tell it often enough, people will believe it. But it's exactly what they're doing. They're telling people that the real is imaginary. And the apparent, the false, is true. So I would say by that definition, every dictator, it's dangerous because it's contagious, is a madman.
Question. Most ministers and preachers of the gospel tell us to put our mind on the spirit, but to gain the knowledge of the universe, why should we not put our mind on the material universe? Answer. Certainly you should put your mind on the material universe and harmonize God with the universe. Now, to make it explicit, it can be said that there are different stages in the process of the divine realization. In the first stage, we consider the material world as well as our gross physical body as real. But if we are seekers after the absolute, we do not find any limitation. Generally, we are mixing up the absolute with the material world, or matter, but the absolute is neither the mind nor matter. When we rise on the plane of the absolute, or, as I give the illustration of the magnet, when we come to the neutral point of the magnet, there is neither positive nor negative. But when we come to the one pole, the other pole, of course, exists. When we are on the positive pole, we cannot deny the negative pole. How can we deny the consciousness of the body unless we go to the neutral point, which is beyond thought, time, and space? So, we must not mix the ideal of the absolute with any of our mental conditions, which are within the limitations of time and space. That would be the distinction, and so there is no confusion about it. We must describe the different viewpoints to understand the relation of the absolute to the universe and also to ourselves.
Would you repeat that phrase, please?
Just the last one?
Yeah.
We must describe the different viewpoints to understand the relation of the absolute to the universe and also to ourselves.
Seeming relation, but yes, I understand.
Question. If the absolute existed in the beginning of all, and if the ultimate goal of all is to involve in the absolute, then why can we not understand the necessity of evolution, as it is necessary for the absolute to constantly manifest itself by means of the material phenomena? Shall I read that question again? Okay. All right. If the absolute existed in the beginning of all, and if the ultimate goal of all is to involve in the absolute, then why can we not understand the necessity of evolution, as it is necessary for the absolute to constantly manifest itself by means of the material phenomena? Answer: yes, the absolute constantly exists and manifests in some form or other. It is a part of its nature. There is no question of necessity of forcing its nature. If this manifestation stops here, as in the case of Khanda Pralaya, or partial dissolution of any planetary system, there would be the manifestation in some other planet. Question: then we would never attain to the absolute? Answer: no, you will certainly attain to the absolute when you go to the neutral point, and where is no subject and object. You may attain to the absolute, but the rest of the world will go on just the same without you. Question: do we understand you to say that the law of action and reaction is a fixed law? Answer: it is fixed in this way, that it is the law that governs all the phenomena. If you strike a blow on the table, you will receive a blow in return. It is fixed in that sense, but it is not fixed beyond the limitations of time and space, because beyond time and space this law cannot work. That's why it's time, space, and causation. That's the law of... All right, question. Then a person who once made some mistakes had to suffer all the rest of his life. Is it natural? Answer: yes, every action will produce its reaction. Nothing is done without producing a result, and that is a good thing to happen. Question.
Swami, could I just have a moment with you for a moment? We're talking here, you see, he's talking in roughly 1920. I'm not quite sure of the date, but I think it's very close to 1920. He was marvelous. He stayed with us for 20 years. There must have been something that Swami Abhedananda asked Abhedananda to come. He stayed for 20 years. So he was at the turn of the century. The 20th century sounds like, 1900, but 20th century sounded like such futurity, and everybody felt that. The beginning of a whole new day with all this stuff. So the subject of evolution was hitting town. And I take things personally. I'm just really a farm boy at heart, simple country boy. And my dad's older brother may have told you about it before, must have. But he was 5 years older than Dad. We just adored him. He was in Illinois, so here we're in New York, a long way away, but just adored him. And he was like everybody's favorite wonderful uncle. And he taught a fellow named John Scopes, who was actually from Kentucky, evolution. He taught him his high school biology. That's what we say he did in Southern Illinois. Well, this guy, John Scopes, goes back not to Kentucky, but to Tennessee. He's an athletic coach. The teacher gets sick or something. And so he substitutes and he teaches the kids evolution. And a monkey trial. And the two greatest lawyers, I love both of them, William Jennings Bryan on the attack, and Clarence Darrow, one of my 10 favorite Americans. I love both of them on the defense of this man for teaching evolution in Tennessee. And I heard a wonderful thing from a book that came out of the mountains of the Appalachian Trail to Dollywood, the Gatlinburg, Tennessee. And all of a sudden, they find the newspaper. This is just a few years ago, 100 years later, whatever. Practically, they're still talking about evolution. They still haven't swallowed that pill. And the fellow that wrote the book, a wonderful author of the New York Times, said, he said, to me it was a high point, but he said, I had not so much concern about these boys in Tennessee being descended from monkeys as they're being overtaken by them. You see? So this evolution thing was really big when Swami Abhedananda was here. And that's what he's talking about, isn't he? The evolution from Brahman of all the phenomenal show, including you and me. And then the involution back, however that may occur, back into the absolute. Now, here's my problem. We heard the word nescience just now. N-E-S, N-E, science. And I didn't know the meaning of the word, so I asked our founding Swami when he was sitting on the floor in his room asking questions after supper. I asked Swami, what's the meaning of that? And what it really means is non-science. It means the lack of knowledge. Science, scientia from the Latin, means knowledge. And by a bit of a stretch, wisdom. Sapiens, Homo sapiens. That's all right. That's a hypothesis. But when they go and call us Homo sapiens, sapiens to distinguish it from Neanderthal man, that's spreading the orange marmalade and the butter on too thick. It hasn't even been discovered yet or established whether we're sapiens, whether we're thinking, whether we're scientia, scientific. I've told you before, they have a 60-inch telescope up there in Mount Palomar, Mount Wilson up here, 100 inches where Hubble found that the universe is expanding, and indeed the galaxies, which were called nebulae, they just look like clouds in the early telescopes, were inside our own galaxy. We all thought they were, or outside. The universe is expanding, they're outside. So the 60-inch telescope, I was looking for extra, solar system planets. It really was for quite a while. Now they have so many you can't count them. Like the old woman had so many children, and the old lived in a shoe had so many children she didn't know what to do. But I heard that in the last few years they've turned the telescope that was looking for planets outside our solar system to the Earth to see if indeed there's intelligent life on Earth. Now, all right. Now here's the point. Nescience, no science, means a lack of knowledge. And I'm going to get a little brutal here, like some of these announcers, they have a skin condition and sometimes they show up with a beard, and then they shave it off. There's one of them like that. So the thing is, this is a little bristly. I'm convinced that our brothers and sisters in the fundamentalist churches, and don't laugh because everybody's got them like Adam the fleas. That was the first poem, fleas. Adam had them. And every denomination's got them. We got them in Christianity. Jews for Jesus are that way. We talked about the limitations of each of the paths. Well, the limitation of Bhakti Yoga, one of them, is that they get fanatical. They can get fanatical through misunderstanding, through appearance and reality. My way's the only way. My Krishna. And that can lead to fanaticism with serious consequences. The other thing is that some of them, maybe all of them, I don't know, believe in what we call biblical literacy. The literal word truth of every word of God, even though it says that Jesus showed up at some place in one of the Gospels at Thursday at 10:30, and another one of the Gospels says, no, it was Wednesday at 9:30 a.m. What are you going to do? These things have been all pointed out. But you see, these are the narrownesses of an extremely bhakti-oriented extreme and irrationally so. So here we have the idea that science is not science, which is illogical, nescience. And you know why we have this terribly anti-intellectual thing? Maybe other religions have to think about Islam, this, that, the other. But I've got in my mind, which is very small, and when I get a hold of something like a little dog, bulldog, a trouser cuff, I say, don't confuse me with the facts. My mind is made up. So I'm convinced that the reasons the fundamentalists in this country and a huge swath of otherwise intelligent, even college-oriented Southern people, and right here in River City and around the nation, are so anti-science, which means knowledge, which means truth, and our luminary Vivekananda says science and truth are all the religion there is. When they say A is not A, hey, unless you got some grander explanation, that's a contradiction in logic. Aristotle pointed it out. As a matter of fact, logic of Aristotle brings its whole base on this concept that a proposition in logic is a statement of which it can be said that it's either true or false. Well, certainly to say in terms of its very being that A is not A, unless you have a metaphorical thing, but more universal, it's not true. It's a logical self-contradiction. And Bertrand Russell was such a great philosopher. I heard him speak once when he said, if I meet myself coming down the path, in a logical self-contradiction, I'll change my mind. Not many people will do that. So I'm convinced the reason these poor people with the contagion of anti-intellectualism, otherwise lovely, wonderful, spiritual people, is because they've been infected by this total resistance of fundamentalism to the theory of evolution. And therefore they branded all of science, medicine, ha! Do you realize what would happen if we still had smallpox running around? And all these other diseases, some of which we have either caught in a bottle or almost eradicated measles from the world, you know. Polio. My sister had a touch of it. Can we live without the truths, relative as they are and conditional, and they can be fixed and they can be broadened, they can be challenged, of science? No, because science and spirituality are friends in Vedanta. They are one. The only thing is that spirituality keeps going on up the mountain after science goes to sleep at night. So Brother Nescience, and this whole thing about appearance and reality, which is a form really of ignorance, which is a kind of form of insanity, we must tell our Southern brothers and sisters, we love you deeply. We would love to have the experience of second birth at the time of our own baptism, initiation, whatever it may be. But you cannot stand. It will not stand. It may not stand, and it will not stand on anti-knowledge and anti-information, and yes, anti-science.
And Uncle Ben? Yeah, Uncle Ben, yeah. All right.
Sam.
Yeah, Uncle Sam, okay. So the answer was yes, every action will produce its reaction. Nothing is done without producing a result. And that is a good thing to happen. Next question. Then everyone would have to suffer all his life. Can this absolute not cure it or wipe it out? Answer. It will be cured in the end. The absolute does never suffer, but the person himself would have to suffer all his life, or as Christ taught, that your own spirit will wipe it out when the divine realization comes. Be rest assured that everything will be wiped out after the attainment of God intuition. And of course, Holy Mother used to say that spiritual practices could dampen your karma. So if you were due for a broken leg, you might get away with a scratch. So that was, she gave a nice explanation of it. When should we feel at liberty to go into the ultimate state, which is known as the absolute? It would seem that when we do that, we have risen above the mental plane and hence would disconnect ourselves by that from our work in this world. Answer. When there is so much work to be done in the world before the humanity is lifted out of this ignorance of which you speak, and, as it is said by Christ, that work would continue until this world would become the kingdom of heaven, and finally all would be laid at the feet of God. Question. Now, until the work is accomplished, are we at liberty to leave our jobs here and go into the absolute? Answer. When you are ready for marching towards the absolute, the world will not need you. This world will give you permission to get out. The world will make you free to proceed towards the divine goal. Question. Do we ever reach that point so long as we are in the field of work and duties? Answer. No, we impose upon ourselves all these works and duties through our ignorance. And And this will be the last question and answer. Who are we to take the responsibility? We cannot move our fingers without the will of the Lord, so the Lord knows how to manage his business. Answer: no, it is our business to seek the kingdom of heaven, because if you seek the kingdom of heaven first, everything else will be added unto you. First of all, we must search for the absolute with an intense longing within us, and must try to realize that before we can do anything else. If we do everything else outside of that, we are always making mistakes, and therefore the teachings of Christ were greater than the interpretation of them. Christ said, "Seek ye at first the kingdom of heaven, and everything else shall be added unto you." Vedanta tells us that first realize the absolute, and then you will do your duty with knowledge and without mistakes. At present, we are groping in the darkness of ignorance, and every way we turn, we stumble. That will stop. The kingdom of heaven will be established on this earth if everybody can do the right thing. Well, that's a nice place to stop.
See up the mountain, Swami. And since you're going faster than I am, I would like to say, if you see Moses, tell him.
Okay. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Filled with Brahman are the things we see. Filled with Brahman are the things we see not. From out of Brahman floweth all that is. From Brahman all, yet is it still the same. Peace, peace, peace. And good night.